a work in progress. It's a work in progress. Yeah.
Hello, and welcome to In Progress with Grace. I'm your host, Grace Davis, and I've got a lot to be honest with you guys about. That's what this podcast really is all about. Honesty, transparency, vulnerability, and honoring the progress that we are constantly evolving into. Both from my personal perspective, my personal life, but also within the lives of people who come on the podcast and get interviewed. So, first thing to be transparent with you guys about today is the fact that I am just getting over a cold. So, you probably hear it in my voice a little bit. I literally just got back to Hawaii from traveling over the holidays, and as soon as I got back, I came down with a pretty gnarly cold. So today is the first day where I actually feel more human and like I can actually think clearly and speak clearly and walk around and do my dishes and things like that. But I've still got some of this congestion going on. So apologies for that. But I felt really, really inspired to finally record this podcast episode today. Another level of transparency. This is not the first time I've recorded this podcast episode. This is the second time I'm recording this podcast episode. And that's because the first time I recorded it, my microphone quality was not as good. I just got this new microphone and I just honestly couldn't wait to use it. And the other reason why I'm recording this for a second time is because the concept and the name of the podcast has already changed. And this is something that I tend to struggle with a lot throughout my life. I've struggled with a lot throughout my businesses, multiple businesses, because I'm constantly evolving and changing. Hence why the new name of the podcast is In Progress. Because I am tired of convincing myself that at a certain point I've hit a level of this is what I'm going to do, this is how I'm going to do it, and it's going to be this way moving forward. And I've wanted to do a podcast for so long, you guys, like years and years and years. And I've never done it because I just couldn't settle on a concept. And then I finally was like, all right, I'm settling on a concept. It's going to be about launching online business. It's going to be about entrepreneurship and, hearing stories from people about how they've overcome challenges. And that's still a huge part of what I want to talk about on this podcast. And in fact, the first two episodes, I guess the next two episodes other than this one are going to be interviews with entrepreneurs from when I was still trying to do launching online with Grace. But I realized after taking some time over the holidays to reflect, there's just been a lot of things shifting in my life, a lot of things shifting. And I've come to a level of acceptance through all of this shifting to recognize that nothing that I do will ever be solid or done or finished. And there isn't one particular topic that I can focus on. I am so passionate about so many things. And if you guys follow me on social media at Wealth is Grace everywhere, then you might have noticed that I do have a lot of passions and there are a lot of things that I care about. In having a podcast, I don't want to be limited to what topics I can or cannot talk about. In my work, I don't want to be limited. And so this is a realization I've had many, many times, but I've come around to this next level, I believe. And we're always kind of hitting new levels, right? We're always learning, we're always growing, we're always in progress. But I've personally come to this place where I am just done and tired of pretending to myself and therefore to everyone else that I've got all my shit together, or that I've got it all figured out, or that, I'm an expert in one particular area. Because the truth is, I'm kind of like a Renaissance man. I love to dabble. I love visual art. I love music. I love poetry. I do love business. I do love marketing. I do love so many things, you guys. I'm passionate about water quality. I'm passionate about environmentalism. I'm passionate about human rights and social rights. And so I would love for this podcast to be a place that really can encompass all of who I am. And so I've been playing the game of niching down for a little while. And within that, I've found a lot of freedom and I've found a lot of value because it's allowed me to have consistency. It's also given me some sort of a guideline so I feel less overwhelmed and more clear. And it's also helped my audience feel really clear about who I am and what I do and what I talk about and what they can expect from me. And at the same time, I want to be more vulnerable. And I've noticed, although there's always been a level of vulnerability in my work because it's just who I am, like I can't show up in this space and not be vulnerable. But there's a deeper layer. And I am ready to really be seen for who I am. A big thing that has come up for me over the past, really this transition, this shift has been happening for the past 3 months or so. And a big thing that I became aware of was the fact that my inner child has been so afraid of being seen, so afraid of being judged, so afraid of being wrong, so afraid of failing, of messing up. And I've really been spending time with her. I've been taking a break from social media. I've honestly been taking a break from work. I paused all of my marketing initiatives, which is a scary thing to do if you're a business owner and, you rely on that income to survive. But I really have just been focused on my active clients and putting a pause on everything so I could give myself space to be with her, to be with myself, to get really clear on what do I want? And how do I see myself moving forward from here? And how can I really support all parts of myself in the work that I do? Because the truth is, I have always been someone who has always been creative and always very committed to what I put out in the world. And so work has always just been a little bit of play. And I've literally since I was 13 years old, just did whatever I was passionate about. And I would just go, hey, I'll just figure out how to make money doing this so I don't ever have to work. And that's what I've been doing since I was 13. That's how I got to where I am today. I started off just making videos because I had fun making videos. And then it ended up becoming a job, and I started doing photography for local businesses and helping design websites and recording social media content for people. And that just kind of grew very naturally. Okay, you know what? I'll share my whole story with you guys because I don't think I've fully laid this out online. And the whole purpose of this particular episode is to share my story with you guys and also to share the vision of this podcast and all of that. So, to give you guys some more insight into how I got here, I started just kind of freelancing for fun, random jobs here and there by the time I was 13. And when I graduated high school, and I grew up doing musical theater, performing on stage, singing, dancing. I grew up playing the guitar from the time I was like 9 years old or so. maybe even younger, but I always grew up with music and performance and theater. And so when I graduated high school, I decided, you know what? Why not go and give this a chance? So I ended up getting accepted for an apprenticeship program in Vermont at a regional theater. And I worked there for a year doing a slew of many, many different things. My favorite place to be was honestly in the props department because I got to get really creative and figure out how to make something out of nothing that was both functional and also looked realistic. I built magic wands. I made fake food. I made a teapot that had to be broken and glued back together every single night. I made hundreds of fake sardines. I made newspapers that were, to the time period that the show was for. And while I was doing that, I was also performing on stage with actors and actresses from Broadway, people who were incredibly, incredibly talented. And I was definitely a small fish in a big pond. And I was not used to that. Let me tell you what. I was very intimidated. And I also struggled a lot to make connections in that environment. While I was doing that, performing on stage or being in rehearsals, I was also doing random stage management gigs. There was one point where I would literally be in rehearsal for a show. We're learning choreography, which was always my weakest part. Like I struggled as a dancer, but I would literally go from being in rehearsal in the middle of choreography, having to run out and change over a set that was happening on the main stage for a live show with an audience, and then run back to rehearsal and catch up with what I had missed. And then we would go on break, and I would literally be applying to colleges and practicing audition material. And then I would leave work from the theater and I would go and I would take voice lessons, and I would go and I would have dance lessons. And occasionally we would take trips to New York, and I would audition for like so many schools all at once, because part of the apprenticeship program was that I needed to basically audition and apply to schools for musical theater. I was trying it all out. And at the end of it, I ended up getting into a couple of schools. I even went and toured and visited a couple of schools in different locations. And I realized, I really love performing. I love theater. I love being a part of the whole creation. But I decided to not go to school for theater. I wanted to do something else. And in fact, I felt really passionate about film and working with cameras and telling stories that way. And I knew that I could have so much freedom if I took it into my own hands. So I moved back home with my parents, and they were like, you've got to do something. Like, you can't just live here and like la-di-da. I was like, don't worry, I'm going to make YouTube videos. And they were like, oh God, here we go again. Because growing up, I would make YouTube videos all the time. Like, multiple times a week, I would put out videos. Sometimes they were little stories that I made with my toys. Sometimes it was me just like making jokes and playing my guitar. I loved it. And so I thought, you know what? I've been doing this for such a long time. I know what I'm doing. People are actually making money doing this now. Why not? So I picked up my camera and I started a series called Create Your Own Adventure. And I went around my hometown, and really the goal was to show people that no matter where you are in the world, you can find something magical and fun and beautiful about wherever you are. So I went around my hometown and I went to all these different places, and I basically created my own adventures. And while I was doing that, eventually I was like, okay, now I've got to make some money because this is not making me money yet. I ended up getting a job with a local videography company, and they were the main videographers for the entire county, for the school system, for the local government. We also did weddings. We also did commercials and things like that. So we had a lot of work. And I started off as an editor for them, and I would go into the office, which was a really chill work environment, just surrounded by camera equipment. And I would edit wedding videos. I mainly started off editing wedding videos. So they would be like hour-long recaps of people's weddings with the full ceremony, and I would make sure the audio sounded good, and then I would do these little like montages in between, and I honestly really enjoyed it. Even though I'm like very non-traditional, I really loved working in the wedding industry, at least for a little bit. And I also then moved on to being a second shooter, so I would actually go to weddings and I would film. And then I started, doing shoots on my own and going for these different government related projects and doing interviews and just getting B-roll and stuff like that. And I really, really enjoyed it and I got paid well. But eventually I was like, okay, I'm starting to feel really antsy being in my hometown. And for those of you who don't know, I grew up in a really small town on a sandbar in North Carolina. And I love it so much. I love it there. But it is small. And eventually I was like, okay, I'm ready to like move on. And I had started dating someone who lived in Virginia. And so I moved to Virginia to be with her. And I ended up just really going for it and saying, you know what, I've got the experience. I've got everything I need. I know what I'm doing. I'm going to just start freelancing and start working with whoever wants to work with me, really. And I'll do content creation and I'll do social media and marketing for people. So I would go to my girlfriend's coffee shop, the place where she worked, and I would just like work on editing whatever projects I was working on for myself. And I would network and people would come in and I'd just strike up conversation. I'd connect with them. And I got all of my clients that way, pretty much all of my clients that way. And I started doing all kinds of jobs. Like I worked with a triathlon company. They were a startup. I worked with life coaches. I worked with musicians. And I would just take whatever work was coming to me, honestly. And I started to build a reputation that way. And then, I was struggling a lot at the time with social media addiction because I didn't really know anybody where I was living. I knew my girlfriend and I had these clients and I had a couple of friends, but nothing that really felt like, oh, I'm home. Like this is home. And, my girlfriend and I at the time, we eventually decided to break up, and I had asked the universe to show me the next steps because I didn't know what was next. I really didn't know what I was doing with my life at all. At this time, I was 19, 20. And the fact that I was able to pay my rent, pay my phone bill, I paid everything. My family didn't help me at the time. The fact that I was able to do all of that at 19, 20 years old, completely freelancing, was honestly very impressive. And I'm really proud of myself for just trusting and going for it. Now, I do have to admit, at the time, I bounced around to a couple of other jobs as well. I did still do some remote editing for the videography company I had started working for. And that was helpful at times when I was in low points. I'd just go, hey, you got any weddings you need help editing? And I would drive like an hour back down to my hometown. I would pick up some hard drives, drive back to Virginia, and just edit those weddings or whatever videos, were going on. I worked at a juice bar for a little bit. And I also worked at a health food store. We had supplements and stuff like that. And pretty much every job that I tried to work like that, I would last maybe 2 weeks or so before I was like, oh my God, what am I doing? like, this is not me. This is not where I'm supposed to be. This is not, and when we're young and we're starting out, like, we do what we need to do to financially support ourselves to pursue our dreams, right? And so I was convincing myself, like, this is what I have to do to bring my dreams into fruition. But the thing is, every single time I did that and I went and got a new job, I would completely drop my passions. It was like I would get so drained by these jobs that I had no energy anymore for the passion. And so eventually I decided, you know what? Screw it. I'm just going to go all in. And if I'm starting to get low on funds, I will just do whatever it takes to get another client, to continue to make the money I need. I'll charge more for my services, et cetera, et cetera. And so I was like, I've always wanted to live in a van and travel the country, and I don't know where I want to be. I don't know where I want to end up. So I've got to go out there and I've got to see the world and I've got to meet people and find opportunities. And then I'll have more clarity on where in the world I want to be. And so here I am. My lease is ending. I'm in Virginia. I'm super depressed. Just went through a breakup. What am I doing? What's going on? And my car was breaking down all the time. I had no money. I mean, it was just, I was in the early stages of entrepreneurship and trying to figure out how to survive as a young adult, very young adult. And I prayed and I was just like, please, universe, please show me, like, what is the next step? Like, what is here for me? Like, I know I'm going through this for a reason, so please show me what's next. And I kept trying to sell my car, and every time I would show my car to somebody, like, something else would break. Literally, as I was showing them, like, I would show my car, and then all of a sudden the battery doesn't work. All of a sudden the AC doesn't work. And I'm like, oh my God, I just fixed that. Why is it not working? So I prayed and I asked for direction and I asked for a very clear sign. The next day, I was driving and somebody in front of me decided they were going to take a random U-turn, and they slammed on their brakes and I slammed on my brakes, and the person behind me didn't see and slammed into the back of my car. I was okay. I got a little bit of whiplash. Everyone was okay in the situation, but my car was totaled. And I remember walking out of my car, standing in the median. Everyone's freaking out, and I am just as calm as I could possibly be after just getting in a car accident. Like, I had been in a couple of car accidents before that, but they were like more basic, like fender benders. This was like a little bit more serious. And I was like, I know exactly what this is. I know exactly what this means. This is a gift from God. And I had full trust. And everyone's like, are you okay? And I'm like, I'm great. So I ended up getting more for my car from the insurance company than I would have gotten if I tried to just sell it outright. I ended up getting my chiropractic care covered for the whiplash. And I was given a rental car for a few days. And when they give you money for a totaled car and they give you a rental car, they're expecting you to go to a dealership and pick out something and be ready to go like the next day. But I was looking for something very specific that you couldn't find at the dealership. This is where it gets crazy. I am driving this rental car and I'm driving back to my hometown because I got booked to help film a wedding. And I'm driving down and I'm just like, and at this point I had my eyes on Craigslist, I had my eyes on Facebook Marketplace, like literally everything, auction sites, everything, you guys, trying to find the perfect dream van. And I'm driving to my hometown to go film this wedding. And I'm like, you know what? This is what I want the van to be like. This is exactly how I want it to be. And I had this vision in my head of what it would be like. And I said, I'm going to find it. I'm going to find it. As I'm driving there are so many vans, like the exact model that I'm looking for, okay, on the side of the road with for sale signs. And every single time I saw one, I pulled over and I checked and I got the number and I looked at it. And none of them were like really, really speaking to me until I got to my hometown. And then there is like a perfect looking van, perfect condition. And I pull over, I get the number, but I had to go film this wedding. Like I did not have much time. So I told my dad about it. He went and looked at it and he said, you know what? It's in your price range. It's in really good condition. I think that it would be foolish to not buy this van. And so while I was out filming this wedding, I just told my dad, like, okay, let's do it. And he basically took care of everything and we switched over to my name or something like that. I don't fully remember. But anyways, I converted this van and literally it was like a week after I got the van, the pandemic hit. And I was like, well, shit, right? Because I was scared, honestly, about traveling across the country during a global pandemic and riots that were happening in major cities. And I was like, this sucks because I just took this step into claiming my dream. So I lived in it in my parents' driveway for 2 months to let things settle. And they were like, what are you doing? Like, you've got to just come. We've got a room for you. Like, why are you sleeping in our driveway? It's weird. And I was like, no, I've got to get used to this. I've got to get comfortable with this lifestyle. Like, I've got to understand so that when I do hit the road, I've got a better understanding of what it's like to live like this. And it's going to give me an idea of if I even want to live like this, right? But honestly, I loved it. I loved living in my parents' driveway, as weird as that sounds, but the level of independence, like I needed that independence and I needed that space and I needed to be in my own rhythm, right? So I did that. And my plan was to, once things calmed down, I guess, like go and start traveling across the country and just meet people and network and find freelance video or photo gigs as I went to sustain me. And I had a lot of people doubt me, very much so. You think you're going to do that? That's crazy. I was like, hey, people do it. If other people can do it, why can't I do it? Right. And even though after 2 months, into the pandemic, things obviously did not, calm down very much. I had enough time to let the emotional stuff settle. And I was able to save some money because I was living for free. And I was able to return back to that video job because they were filming a lot of videos about the pandemic. Hey, this is how you wash your hands and things like that for the government. So I did that. And I made some videos documenting my experience with the pandemic and van life and all of that. And then I decided, it's time to go. And I traveled basically out to California, where I ended up working in the cannabis industry, and just basically hid out for an entire year growing cannabis and working with that medicine and making art. And I realized, you know what? I really love making art. I really love painting. I really love drawing. I'm good at it. I always have been. I've been doing this since I was a kid. And so I decided, you know what, when festivals are back and events are back, I'm going to take my artwork and I'm going to go festival to festival and I'm going to sell my artwork and that's how I'll make money and that's how I'll live and I'll live in my van. I fell in love. I got a new partner and him and I decided to drive back to the East Coast for the holidays and we got profiled. And I'm not going to go into details about that, but it was a very traumatic experience. This task force in particular is literally famous, I learned later on, and notorious for being incredibly corrupt. So that was a very challenging situation. And because of court and all of that, we needed to be close to Tennessee to handle that. I ended up moving to Asheville, North Carolina, which I had always wanted to live there, but, this situation kind of planted us there. We still did do the festival thing once festivals came back. We would travel out to Tucson and we would buy loads of ethically sourced and mined crystals, and we would make wire wrap jewelry, and I would take my artwork and we would sell crystals and art and wraps at these festivals. And for a while, it was very lucrative and we did really well financially. We would eat out all the time. We would travel all the time and we would make good money doing what we were doing. Then eventually that died down and people stopped buying things, and it was less and less and less and less until the point where we started losing money. I decided I can't do this anymore. I'm going to have to shift gears. And that's when I got introduced to the water world. And I was always passionate about water quality. At the time, we would literally go to a place in the mountains where spring water gushed out, and we would fill up 5-gallon jugs of spring water. And then I was introduced to multi-pure and a magic. You've maybe heard of the Kangen water machines, and got involved with that. And honestly, it was a great experience. I know a lot of people have mixed things to say about a magic or the Kangen water machines because there's this perception of it being a pyramid scheme, which is not true, by the way. I could go into that in another episode. I could talk more about my experience with that business, with that company. Honestly, it's been great. I don't really do a whole lot in that world anymore, but I still have my distributorship and people know me for that in certain corners of the internet and the world. And so if someone comes to me and they want help with that, I'll help them with that. I still drink the water. I still use the products and I love them. And then I kind of got to a point where financially, things started to be challenging. Again, I went through another breakup, and housing at the time was just so incredibly challenging. So I was full-time living in my Honda CR-V. I took a break from the water business. I honestly took a break from everything because I didn't know really what I wanted to do, which direction to go. I needed immediate money, etc. So I was living in my Honda CR-V and I was door dashing for a living. I would do DoorDash. I would do Instacart. I was just delivering food. I was constantly running deliveries because I was living in my car. What else was I going to do? I was just really trying to figure it out. I ended up falling in love again. And he was also living in his van, but I knew that I wanted my own business and I wanted that freedom, And so I continued on with the water business and I stayed dedicated to it. And even though I didn't have any money, I hired my first coach. And then as soon as I hired my first coach, and I took out a loan to do this, and then I got hired to do social media marketing for 2 local businesses in the area I was living that are focused on permaculture and education and connecting people with the land and their ancestry through gardening. And those are things that I'm super passionate about that go honestly hand in hand with the whole water quality thing that I was doing. So I was like, heck yeah, I'll do that. And I managed these accounts. I grew one account from, they had like 1,000 followers when I first started working with them, grew them to 12K. I still work with them to this day. I love them. Shout out to Soul Gardens. I love you guys so much. That helped give me some financial stability, doing work that I was passionate about, that I did enjoy, to pay for this coach, to pay off this loan. I picked well, and I really listened to my intuition, even though so many people were like, don't spend all this money on a coach. Like, you barely know this person. There's no guarantee that she's going to be able to help you. And I was like, I just know that this is right for me. I did it anyways. And within 3 months of working with her, I had started making the most money I'd ever made in my life through my water business. Like, she helped get me organized and structured, because even though I was really good at helping other people with that, like I could look at someone else's business and go, okay, this is exactly what you need to do to get clear and organized to move forward. I really struggled with it when it came to my own thing. Also because I've all these passions, right? And this is something I still struggle with. I think this is something everyone struggles with, regardless of what business they're in, what background they have, et cetera, et cetera. Like you can be a branding expert, but then when it comes to your own branding, feel so lost. So she really helped me get organized, get some strategies down, and I was able to make a good amount of money. Within that timeline, my partner and I were able to move into a bigger house. And we both, when we first met, we knew that we wanted to move to Hawaii. At this point, I had been wanting to move to Hawaii for a few years. The first time I came to Hawaii, I was 13, around 13 or so. And I just fell in love with it. I had all these visions and these dreams of seeing my older self living my day-to-day life here. And I just knew someday I'll live here. But I never put any pressure or timeline on it. And I needed to like travel around the mainland USA. Yeah, so we both knew we wanted to move to the Big Island specifically. I started making all that money and I was able to support us to move out here. And so we did. And so that was about a year ago. And once I got here, and this is the funny thing, and this all comes around full circle as to why I'm starting this podcast and why I've changed the name and all of it. So we got to Hawaii about a year ago. And as soon as we got here, my water business petered out. I didn't change any of my strategies. Like I was doing everything the same. And I was very on top of my mindset work, my energetic work. I was still working with this coach, but it just kind of died out. And I was like, why does this always happen to me? I'll get into a good groove with something. I'll start making good money. And then all of a sudden it'll die out. And this is also around the time I started to learn more about human design. And I learned, okay, I'm a manifesting generator. And I started learning, okay, that means like I'll have these cycles where I feel very passionate about something. And then when it's no longer in alignment, it'll peter out. And that's what happened with this water business. I was passionate about it. I loved it. I still love the products. I still use them every single day. I still talk about them. I still sell machines. I still sell water filters from time to time. But it's not my main gig. I don't even really promote it or talk about it too much. And it just started to fall out of alignment. And I realized it's because it's not my own thing. Like I didn't create this. Sure, I'm marketing it. Sure, I'm sharing it. I'm creating all my own content, all of that. And it's doing really well. I mean, I grew my account from like 1,000 followers to 20K within the period of like a month. And I had hundreds of people reaching out to me constantly for more information. And I was doing well with it. I moved to the island. All of a sudden, nothing's working anymore. You know, it was just like, this is deeper than a strategy. I tried workshopping it. I tried forcing it. I tried pushing. And then I realized it's just not in alignment for me anymore. It's time to shift gears. As soon as I surrendered that and I let go, I started having all these people reach out to me going, hey, you do social media work, right? Hey, you do content creation. Hey, you do marketing, blah, blah, blah. Right. I'm like, yeah. They're like, are you taking on new clients? Yeah, sure. Right. And I ended up literally within the period of a month from having nothing. And also within that time period, I got scammed for the first time in my life, like $6,000, which for me at that time was a lot of money. I then all of a sudden had all of these clients reoccurring paying $1,000 a month. It was really cool and all work that I was passionate about and I was enjoying it. And so I went with that. And then I was being asked, hey, like, do you teach content creation? Because you're really good at it. And I was like, you know what? That's a great idea. And I decided I'll make a digital course and I'll call it the Radiant Presence. And I'll also sell that. And I started making the course. And then I realized, you know what? I want to do more than a course. I want to do something that's more hands-on. I want to do something that is more of a coaching program. And I had already been coaching for a few years within the water business. I had grown a team of other distributors, people who were also really passionate about the products and water quality, and they just needed support with the business side of things. And I had marketing experience and I had, experience building businesses. So I had been coaching them and everyone was giving me really positive feedback. And so I was like, you know what? Like I have the skills, I have the experience, like I could do this. So the Radiant Presence digital course ended up very quickly turning into the Radiant Presence Mastermind, which is still an active mastermind I am running to this day. And it is a full online business mastermind program where we literally go from the emotional and mental aspects of running a business. We talk about creating offers. We talk about marketing those offers, and we talk about the sales process. We talk about organizational habits, literally everything that you need to know to run a successful online business we cover in this mastermind program. And it's honestly just such a sweet place to be. And I really love running the mastermind a lot. But I have realized in these past couple of months that I'm going through another phase of change. Like I had mentioned before with the water business, like things just started to die out. Things started to not feel as aligned. And I knew I needed to shift. And that's how the Radiant Presence Mastermind was born. I'm going through another one of those phases now. Not to say that the Radiant Presence is dying. I'm still running the mastermind. But I mentioned at the beginning of this episode, I have put all of my marketing initiatives on pause. And that's because I needed the space and the time to find that clarity of what's next. And through this space and time, I've realized like, wow, what am I really most passionate about right now? And it truly is writing music, songwriting, vocal expression. That it's part of why I'm doing this podcast. Like this is an exercise for me to get more comfortable speaking my truth, to get more comfortable being seen, to get more comfortable saying what I mean and not second guessing myself. And so I have been in this place of I don't really know what's next. And even sitting here in front of you today, I don't really know what's next other than I know I want to come on this podcast and I want to talk about this process and I want to be transparent about, you know, what's coming up as it comes up, because this is the life of an entrepreneur. This is the life of someone who is multi-passionate. And I know that a lot of you out there feel the same way, where you have so many things you care about and you just simply cannot do them all at once, all the time. We go through cycles. And I think it's actually very natural. And so I've always constantly been on this journey of like, how can I make a living and live very well and be wealthy in all sense of the word, right? Like wealthy in the sense of just happiness and joy and peace through life, wealthy relationships, but also financial wealth and abundance and material abundance in that way. Like, how can I be wealthy and still do what I love and still do all the things that I love when I'm in alignment with those things? And it's something that I think will be a lifelong exploration. Because that's just the nature of life, right? Like we think that we understand it and then we realize we don't know anything. And so my intention with this podcast is to, first of all, document my experience as I go through these ebbs and flows of life and to be honest and transparent and say, here I am. This is where I'm at. This is what I'm doing. This is what I'm offering. This is what I'm discovering. And to also share that experience with others too, to have guests on the podcast to talk about their experience as entrepreneurs, to talk about their experience as multi-passionate human beings, and like to see for myself and to show you and to show the world that like, you don't have to just be one thing your whole life and then die. Like some of us are put on this earth with a very clear focus. And we know this is the one thing I'm passionate about. This is the one thing I'm good at. This is the one thing I'll do until I die. But a lot of us were put on this earth with like 5 things that we're passionate about that we could do until we die. But we like cycle through them in this weird way. And I'm just done with the perspective, the perception that that's wrong, that won't get us anywhere. Like the whole like master of none perspective. I think that we can be masters of lots of things. And I think that when we allow ourselves to go with the natural ebb and flow and live in alignment, we actually can become masters of many things, like the Renaissance man, right? Or woman, however you identify. I'm personally non-binary, so I could go either way. But yeah, like we can do whatever we want, really, is really the core of it that I want to explore. And that's why I'm changing the name of the podcast from Launching Online with Grace to in progress with Grace, because we're not just here to talk about online business. We will definitely still be talking about online business, entrepreneurship, marketing, content creation, all that good stuff. But I also want to have conversations about social dynamics. I also want to talk about music. I also want to share my music with you guys. I also want to talk about spiritual connection, living in alignment with God, with spirit. And when I say God, you guys, by the way, I'm not just talking about like from a Christian sense. I don't identify as a Christian. I don't identify as any particular religion. But I see God as everything. I see God as the universe, as the molecules that are in the air that are within us, like the light that is within each individual cell. Anyways, that's a whole other conversation. See, so many things that we can talk about on this podcast. And I just want to talk about it all. I want to talk about life. I want to talk about passion. I want to talk about love. I want to talk about relationships. I want to talk about, and I'm just done with trying to put myself in a box and fit a niche to appeal to a specific group of people. If you like my vibe, if you want to have these conversations, if you're open-minded, if you're willing to get vulnerable with yourself, with others, with me, then this is going to be a good place for you. So, welcome. Yeah. Oh my God, this is what we're doing. And I'm really excited about it. I am really excited about it. I do already have 2 future episodes recorded. At the time, I was under the impression that I was going to be calling this Launching Online with Grace. So I may mention that at certain times in the episodes in the future, just so you guys know. But I am changing the name because you know what? I have free will. And yes, I know that it goes against certain marketing rules that I have believed in my entire life, but part of this is also a little bit of an experiment because I want to see if I can just kind of let go of all of the conditioning that I've received about marketing and the way things are supposed to be done and like what resonates with people, like what's going to happen. Because I truly believe that we are going through a lot of changes as society where people are like, yes, people want clarity, and that's what niching down does. Like, it can really help give clarity to your audience of what they can expect, what you can expect from yourself. I already mentioned that, but I think we are entering a time where that is not as important, because what is most important is vulnerability, is authenticity, is honesty. And so my devotion, my commitment to my work and to this podcast is to be honest, is to be vulnerable, and to just share, to provide value. And my hope is just that you guys get some sort of value through these conversations, whether that's through reflection, through representation, through, hearing something that you have felt spoken to in a way that you've never heard that just resonates deeply in your body. That's my hope. So that being said, that is all for today. We're going to wrap it up here. Thank you so much for listening. And I don't even know how often these episodes are going to be coming out yet. So just like do a homie a favor, subscribe to my YouTube channel, turn on the bell notification so you get notified when new episodes come out. I'm going to shoot for weekly podcast episodes, but in the nature of everything I was just talking about, who knows what's going to happen. This is a work in progress. My life is a work in progress, and sometimes I'm very consistent, sometimes I'm not. So we'll see what happens. But if you subscribe and you hit the little bell notification, you will get notified when new episodes come out. If you're listening on Spotify or Apple Music or Amazon or wherever you're listening, go ahead and follow the podcast so you still get notified for new episodes. If you liked this episode today and you are feeling excited about what is to come, then I would love it if you could drop a quick little review or a comment if you're on YouTube. Just let me know, like, did any of this resonate with you? Do you align with any part of my story? What are you looking forward to? What are you most excited about? I'm very excited for what the future has to hold. So thank you for listening. Thank you for joining, and I will talk to you next time.
Don't